multiple people say the same thing a dozen times.
For it to make sense and sink in.
That's happened so many times for us.
So if you have more than 5 people, there's like a
the
running joke.
Yeah.
There's something wrong with them.
Oh no.
There's a fine line between selling and featuring. You just have to be careful of that line if you're going to go that route.
Today we're going to talk about aspects of social media and how you can take advantage of it in a way that starts to build an audience the right way.
So when we talk about social media, people are probably a little concerned that they're going to have to dance in front of a camera for TikTok. That's the first thing that I think of whenever I see businesses kind of advertising or trying to get onto these social media platforms. They're always like performers, and it's just really uncomfortable.
Like they're trying to force something that's not really natural to them? Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. So when we think about consistently providing value to your audience, showing up regularly online over time. Like you don't have to just, hit it really hard and be someone who you're not, especially with your business account. Like that's, really important. You're going to have a driving force there. But to get attention online, you can either spend money, so advertising, sponsorships, you can throw money at it, or time, which is you can create content, you can have engagement with the audience. So money is an accelerant, but it only works well if you already have something that's working organically. You can't just throw money at something. We've all seen really bad ads. And just because you throw money at an advertisement doesn't mean it's going to look good.
It kind of reminds me of just anything. If you don't understand how to speak to your customers and reach out to them, you're not going to be calibrated when you're making sales for your business. You won't know how to speak to them. You won't know what their pain points are, what you're trying to solve for them. So when people try to bring their unsuccessful business onto social media to accelerate their business, a lot of times what they're doing is they're just showcasing their lack of fit with their market. So I think that's kind of key, because what we've seen is when somebody is able to get to the bottom of what's causing problems. So when you really identify who your target market is, you go through like the story brand or whatever it is and just identify this is the person we're working for, this is the person's problem, and this is, all of that. All of a sudden you have a much clearer message to deliver across everything, your products and services, social media, everything.
So are we kind of looking at the why behind why someone's doing something, or what would you call that?
Donald Miller would call it building a story brand. Ed Lawrence would call it defining who your avatar is. Other people might call it, really identifying your target market, your niche, so something like that. There's a lot of names for it. At the end of the day, it is a specific type of person who is looking to buy something very specific and solve a certain problem in their life, and you're delivering that solution. So it almost needs to be very clear and focused.
So whenever we're taking a step back, figuring out who our audience is, we're not going for the mass market, and you're not going for something extremely dialed in and expensive. You're kind of going for the center niched in areas.
So my thought is, if I have absolutely no sales and no clue where to start, I'm going to go look for where the money is actually changing hands. So that's where the river is. I identify my niche there. From that point where I'm like, okay, there's a lot of money over here, I'm going to jump in that. And then I'm going to try to get my bearings and figure out where can I be unique? Where can I offer some differentiated value? And then that's where, like we said last week, start drilling down and digging into it. So, you may not start out knowing exactly who your customer is, but when money starts changing hands, you can pull a lot of information out of that and kind of reverse engineer. If you're on a sales call, you record your sales calls, you start writing down all the specific details of, okay, this customer had this problem, they had this issue, all of that stuff. A little bit of tracking goes a long way for answering questions that you may not even know you have to answer.
Now, whenever we're talking about getting on social media with your business, this might make you feel like you have to be the center of attention. You have to show your daily life, you have to show what you're having for lunch, like that type of thing. You have to really let people behind the curtain almost.
Not necessarily. That makes you the center of the spotlight rather than you becoming the spotlight.
Yes.
Right?
So in all of that, there's a difference in trying to be the spotlight whenever you're dealing with your business. So a lot of people wonder if they should have a brand site or if they should have a personal site. But at the end of the day, we take a look at people like Ryan Reynolds. He is an actor, so he's a celebrity person. But at the end of the day, he has utilized that to build businesses and to be an entrepreneur. And if we look at things like Tesla even, people connect more with someone like Elon more than they do building cars and the Tesla brand as a whole. Whenever you're buying from these people or buying into their ideas, it's for the people behind it, not so much the product, because a car is a car at the end of the day.
Absolutely. So essentially what I've noticed is whenever I'm trying to find a solution for something, I'm looking for a solution. I'm not looking for a product. So I'm not trying to buy a product. I'm trying to achieve a solution. And what I'll usually do is I'll stumble across an entrepreneur, a teacher, an educator, something like that, that, and I'll lock in to their message. So now I'm building rapport with them virtually. And then whenever they say, I have this product, then that allows me to say, oh, okay, that's a conduit for me to go get the solution that I want to achieve, and this is the person to do it. So you do have the brand that you're building up, which is your product, and it needs to solve a problem. But I think nowadays things are changing from a reliance on marketing. For a long time it was Coca-Cola, it was Pepsi, it was Hershey's, and they could run these huge marketing campaigns, spend millions of dollars to lock you on a product. And there's been this change to, this is what your life could look like, this product is the conduit, and now this is a person who is influential in the field that can solve this problem, and then you go to them and they have the product that can solve that thing for you. I think that's a very interesting shift, but it mirrors how humans act and how they think, how we think,
Yeah. It does make you take a step back and say, okay, what are they shining the spotlight at? So there's two different groups of people. You have a solutions-oriented and you have a problems-oriented. If you're in a room with people and you're like, okay, who here wants to get into CrossFit? Probably not going to have a lot of hands go up. Yeah. But if you say, who here wants to change something about their body? Who wants to get healthier? A lot more hands are going to go up. That's the difference between, a solutions and a problem-oriented question. So whenever, the person who's standing at the front asking the questions, they might have a CrossFit company, but they're not saying, buy this, buy this, buy this. They're becoming the spotlight for their business, finding the problem that will connect with their end user, and then presenting that as a solution.
I think it's interesting you just brought up the health and fitness area, because when somebody is trying to help you get fit, they're not saying, are you fat? Are you this? Are you that? Are you out of shape? I mean, all they have to do is look in the mirror and they know, of course they are. So that's never what they say to win clients, right? It's, hey, are you ready to get fit? They just jump right past the problem. The problem is assumed. Are you ready to get fit? Are you ready to get healthy? Are you ready to lose weight? And then, hey, we can do this together, whatever their story is. And they're shining a light on the solution.
Yeah.
I think that's interesting too. A lot of business owners will say, do you need 72 t-shirts? Well, not necessarily. You know what I mean? It's whatever the problem is.
Do you want to pay $25 a shirt? No, not really.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, it is. And for some reason, the health industry has almost the correct way to look at things. They approach things very cautiously because they're dealing with individuals in a very sensitive subject.
Cautiously? What do you mean?
Like, they're not going to walk up to someone and say, you're fat, you need to work out. They're going to say, do you want to get healthier? Can I help you get healthier? What are your goals? Like, they're more looking for what the person is going to present as the issue instead of telling them, you need this.
The word that comes to mind instead of cautious is dialed for me.
That's
because
very good, yeah.
When you think about a mega billion-dollar industry like fitness, everybody eats food. Most people in the U.S. eat too much food.
Yeah.
It's such a huge market, but it's also extremely competitive. There's nutritionists, there's fitness trainers, there's gyms. Everybody in the pipe is trying to get their piece of it. So you have to really understand how to dial in and connect to someone very quickly. I think when you try to apply those principles to a small niche where you say, well, I don't have a whole lot of examples to look to for how to go after this niche, how to connect with them, it makes it more difficult on you to get started, because you can't say, oh, if I could only just apply the analogy of, the fitness industry over to here, which you can take the principles of what works there and apply it, but it's not easy like that. You were giving an example the other day where you were talking about the cars, starting a car apparel brand. And we even had the conversation, by giving the comparison of a car apparel brand, there could be a lot of people out there who are in, completely different niche. Oh yeah, well, I do dog bandanas, or I do this, or I do that. And it may be difficult, it usually is difficult when you're first starting out, to take the principle of what works, going up a level, and apply it to your specific niche, because you're so new that it's just, I don't know if I'm even moving in the right direction.
You see that a lot in like lives and questions and answers, where they're going over something and they'll go through the whole spiel of exactly what to do, and someone will get in the comment section and be like, okay, but what about for this brand? What about for this niche? What about? And they're like, just do the same thing, just replace the word.
But you almost have to hear somebody or multiple people say the same thing a dozen times
for it to make sense and sink in.
That's happened so many times for us. It's like, oh, I've heard 7 different people say something 7 different ways, and then all of a sudden today it's just
clicks.
Boom, it clicks. I get it now,
So when we're thinking about the platforms, there's so many different social media platforms. People get overwhelmed. Like, where do you start? What do you do? For us, we've repurposed a lot. So we'll be on, YouTube mainly, and then we'll repurpose things for Instagram. I think we even have a couple of TikToks. Just using the same video and cutting it up. And so that's one one way that people can kind of get across to different platforms. But I think it is important to not just be on one. You should definitely diversify. Not everyone's on one. People are spread out over all different platforms for all different things. We've seen it before where shorts will perform really well on YouTube and on Instagram they won't, or vice versa. That happens all the time.
There's a couple ways you could look at it too. One way is, there's TikTok and Instagram. There's all these different platforms. I need to be active on all of them, and it becomes a crushing burden.
Yeah.
Or you can say, all right, I'm going to start out creating a Facebook group or joining Facebook groups or creating a YouTube channel. You start in one place, you start figuring that out. You create consistency. There's a whole argument whether it's better to post once and try really hard or whether to post 10 times and just, keep iterating on it.
On the same app or
on any platform, just, or bouncing around.
Yeah.
You have to create consistency. And it's really hard, no matter what it is, to create a habit pattern of consistency if you're trying to jump from 5 or 10 different things all at once. In fact, when we were introducing equipment into the shop, we had kind of an unspoken rule of no more than one piece of equipment every 18 months.
Wow.
So we start with screen printing, and then it was embroidery, and then it was this, and then it was that. So if we went too fast, then you don't have enough time to learn it, to really incorporate it, and
even to market what you have available.
Right.
Yeah.
So when it comes to social media, then you have YouTube that you could start out with, or Facebook groups, and really lock into that. Spend 6, 12, 18 months learning that one platform. And there's so much to learn about on any specific platform you choose. But then know that there is an opportunity for you to expand past that whenever you're ready. So instead of rushing it and being crushed by it, you can lock into it and grow as you're ready.
So you had mentioned engagement on the platforms, and one of the reasons why you really want to do that, there's this thing called the Robert Dunbar effect, and it's these consecutive circles where you have an intimate circle of 5 people. It's your immediate family. So if you have more than 5 people, there's like a running joke. There's something wrong with one of them.
Oh no.
And then you have 15 people, which is like the sympathy group. So these are the people that you can also confide in, seek support from. So they're really like your friends and your close, like extended family.
Okay.
And then you have 50 people. It's a close network. So these are a little bit outside of your immediate friends that you would call with anything. Yeah, I know. Who has 50 friends?
Not anymore.
And then you have your acquaintances. It's 150 people. These are just random people that, friends of friends or people that you meet. And then you have the broader network of 500 to 1,500 people. This is the amount of people that we can put a name and a face to. So anything outside of that, you're either really gifted or you just forget people.
Okay. 500 people.
I don't even know if I remember 500 people, to be honest.
We've run into people at the supermarket before. They're like, oh yeah, we went to high school together. I'm like, oh, okay. And it just kind of, 10 years is a long time.
When it comes to making a purchase from a brand, a company, or a person and trusting them, because you have to trust them if you make a purchase, you have to be in the 50 to 150 circle range. So the close network or acquaintance group, because there's a level of familiarity and some level of personal connection, which is why it's so important to build up exactly who you're engaging with and the content on these platforms. Just like a little formula you could do. Monday, use it for pain points. So within your niche, what are a couple of good pain points that you could pick out for people who have equipment or print on demand?
I don't know. I got hung up thinking about your broader audience. Have you ever had someone reach out to you, squirrel moment, just out of the blue from your broader network, Facebook friend?
Like an MLM, yeah.
Yes! Like, oh, hey, I haven't seen you in forever. We should get together, have some coffee. If you entertain them even for a second, then you find out for sure it's an MLM.
That's the difference between you and I. I don't entertain people. You do.
Well, it's happened to me multiple times. Like, oh, wow, that's cool. They want to reconnect.
I don't talk to people.
No, but back to your point. A problem when it comes to print on demand or screen printing. So we're talking about the clients that would come to us when we were offering these services? What's the context
No,
there?
so this is going to be for the person who's posting. What's a pain point that they can put on for engagement on their social media that would appeal to the person that they're hopefully would become their customer?
So that's a good question. I've noticed a lot of people lately are engaging more with the makerspace, demonstration of what you can do. So instead of saying, do you need 12, 24, 72 t-shirts? Well, okay, that's not really a thing that people are going around thinking. Yeah. But what is interesting is, hey, watch me create these t-shirts. Watch me design. Right. Let me showcase what I'm doing here. And an entertaining way. Because what ends up happening is you create a relationship where you're bringing them into a day in the life of you using your product, or you're creating your product or your service.
But now you know why, because it's the human aspect of bringing them into the circle.
Because that is why, specifically why, business social medias way underperform personal brands. The business social media is always pitching. So it's very difficult for somebody to get out of the mode of, oh, I'm creating a product, therefore I'm going to pitch my product every single time, and get into the mode of what is going to add value or entertainment or educate somebody and build that relationship. That relationship building aspect of it goes a long way. So if you're creating social media, it probably would be more beneficial to just showcase your best work in an entertaining format and then let the audience build around that, because what will happen is they will start to associate you with that process, with that mastery. And then whenever they do have a need, who are they going to call? They're not going to think of the company that pitched them, do you need 24/72 t-shirts? They scrolled past that long ago. They're going to think about you.
You just have to, there's a fine line between selling and featuring. You just have to be careful of that line if you're going to go that route. But that's a good idea.
I think as a viewer, it's easy to tell the difference, right? So there's that one guy that makes tables. What is the guy's name?
You say that, but then I've seen, like whenever I got onto the TikTok affiliate to research all of that, there was a thing where she was showing like strapless bra or something, and it looked like a homemade film of her being really fed up with everything on the market, and she was just like in her car. I thought it was just a normal video, and I found it on the affiliate site. She's made buku money from that, and it came across as like typical day in the life type thing. So it was really interesting.
Super guerrilla marketing is what you're saying. So how does that tie in? What's the parallel we're drawing on that one?
Well, just if you're gonna kind of straddle the line.
If you're gonna market, I mean, there's no issue with letting people know that you've got a product or service that you offer.
No, but if we're going to go down like the content formula for posting, you don't want to start Monday off with selling, because you don't want to be, the spotlight of, hey, look at me, buy, buy, buy. You want to either focus on a pain point, or you can connect with your audience in the guerrilla marketing type style that she did. But it was the coolest thing, because marketing now is very different than it used to be. Okay, and then Wednesday, you could do something news within your niche. So think of one of the things we just did with was it Christian Dior handbags? Was it Dior?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then how they had their big like news breakout story. That was something that you could post if you're into the apparel industry. And then Friday, do something for what they call the prize, the desired outcomes, or what it is that your customers would actually want. So these are the things that people want to talk about, and they will actually help drive your engagement. So that might start out like really quiet, like crickets, but you can always go back and make sure you're sticking to things and not selling, just adding engaging content. Everyone does this though. So if you go back and you look at some of the really large Instagram accounts or YouTube channels, they've all done this where they'll choose like certain people within their niche, engage with them either in the comment section or through messaging, and they'll reach out and be like, hey, I saw your post on this, if it has to do with what their whole niche, what they were just posting about. I like this aspect that you talked about, or in the photo or video, I liked this. Really interesting point of view. So they're connecting and they're growing the rapport, and then from there it builds like this little tribe, and it allows you to have like the best engagement, which will jumpstart the whole roll of all of your socials and across all platforms, because the more people jump on the train. We did this in our niche where Pat and I would reach out to people, hey, loved your outfit in this, can I send you some stuff? Or it was after a couple messages, but it was the best way to get feedback and have a conversation, get a follow, I follow them. And then they start commenting on the pictures and the videos.
Create a real engagement.
Yeah, and then down the road, that was when we would send them the free stuff. So not only am I building rapport and building the little tribe, we're also getting people to wear our stuff on these platforms and get content that way.
That's interesting. I think some of the longest running relationships that we've created are the ones where we've personally invested with these people.
Yeah.
I
still have people reach out. And I don't go on there very often, but they'll specifically reach out to me. Hey, how you doing? This is going on, and I'll check on them, and they'll tell me happy birthday. I just, we've built relationships with these people because we've just built up the whole thing. We care, they like the brand, they believe in it, and it just creates this really nice environment to be in.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I know that you're familiar with a certain group on Facebook, And
Okay.
it has to do with machinery and equipment and people who have these machines. What do you think you could do if you were an individual in like a specialty group within the t-shirt or apparel industry? How can you engage with those people to build up your social medias?
You can't.
Why can't you?
After having been a part of like 40 different embroidery DTF, DTG groups.
They really don't.
They're a salty bunch.
They like helping, with issues, and sometimes if you ask them the correct way.
Occasionally. Yeah, you kind of have to go in with thick skin. If you have an issue. I saw this one girl I was working with. She bought it was a $5,000 direct-to-film printer, and she had an issue with something. I think her belt was fraying or something like that. And she asks for help. And this one other girl who had a $15,000 machine, and her post history was just her bashing the machine, super angry about the one she had. She was just, lots of frustration. She comes in there and she's like, "Oh, you got an entry level machine. That's the problem. You need to toss that in the trash." Not solving the problem of her carriage belt fraying slightly. Just got all on her case and was like, "No, you need to go spend $15,000." And she's like, her one comment back was, "Like you and the machine you're not happy with?" Oh my goodness, the whole world ended right there for her. I felt so bad. But I feel like for a lot of people, when you go to these groups where you're talking about equipment, there's a fine line between you're on the in crowd and you're doing things just right, speaking whatever their specific language is. And this has happened on internet forums for decades. They start developing their own buzzwords, their own language, their lingo, whatever it is. And if you don't speak that language just right, you get alienated and pushed out or just kind of almost internet bullied. So, the other thing is there's a scarcity mindset that comes with a lot of these groups. You're either bragging about how well you're doing to people who are never going to buy your products and services, or you are complaining about how bad it is for you to other people who can then chime in and tell you how bad it is for them too, because they're all on these groups instead of selling. So, it's it's almost like try to go in there and get the value you can out of some of these groups. Dentists aren't trying to drum up business from other dentists.
Right.
And I think that's where you should look at it.
There's a support system almost that happens. I think a lot of times in being an entrepreneur can be isolating. And so it is nice having a group of people who are kind of in the same realm as you.
I see what you're saying. Well, if it was easy to find people who are the right kind of motivated and forward moving, then the Growth Accelerator wouldn't need to exist.
Yeah.
You really have to be selective with who you surround yourself with, and if they're going to be helping you grow. I remember years ago when I had my shop. My shop was on the corner of a wedge, and we were on the south corner, and the people who were right behind us, 75 feet behind us, had an automatic screen printing press, and they had their book of business, and then right up the street was another one that had their book of business.
Wow.
All three of us were within a mile of each other, 3 screen printer embroiderers, and none of our clients were swapping back. I should say, one time in 4 years did we have a client that left our shop because they didn't like our price and went up the street, and Charlie at the time said, "Hey man, I think this is a client that blah blah blah," because we did stuff together. He's like, "I'm going to turn him away too." That was the only time it ever happened. We didn't have a whole lot of...
People are creatures of habit, for sure.
Yes, we had non-overlapping books of business. And I think the big takeaway for me was people stake out their territory and they want to protect their own little domain. And they're so afraid of anybody else in the same industry that they become very combative as opposed to being cooperative and helping each other. And in reality, being cooperative can be the determining factor in everybody succeeding and doing well, and 75-80% of people just failing out and not doing well.
Yeah.
And the 1 or 2 are limping along too,
Yeah. I think it does bring an interesting point though, because you can build your own group within your niche. So it wouldn't be for, selling anything, but if you build up a group that you can do almost like lives with, or just start a discussion group of almost in the niche, those always do well. The goal is to get people to go from engaging with your content to really becoming a part of your tribe in the end and becoming a part of your inner circle of warm leads. I think that they'll be more inclined when you're directly relating with a person and in place of a brand. We've seen that over and over again. You can think of, who's that guy who has Virgin? I forget his name. Branson.
Richard Branson?
Richard.
Richard.
That's your name and I forgot it.
I'm Richard.
I know.
But there's Richards out there. That's a difference.
Is he British?
I don't know what he is.
What is he?
Surrey, England, yes. He's a Richard.
Okay, so he has 12.3 million followers on X. How many followers does Virgin have? Because I know it's significantly less.
Let's find out. 700,000 on Virgin Atlantic.
Way less than his main profile.
Whatever it is, it's a fraction, yeah.
So that right there, he's one of the most well-known people. And than him and Elon Musk probably, but they both outperform their brands like astronomically.
Absolutely. Yeah, personal brand outperforms
Yeah,
it.
people just connect with people way more than they do a brand. So whenever we're talking about, not putting sales or look at my product or look what you have to almost lead the whole conversation with a solution for the end user, or else how are they going to connect with you?
Absolutely. I mean, even when you look back in time a little bit, or even right now, you think of Apple, but a lot of times people think of Tim Cook. They like to personify the decisions of this multi-billion-dollar corporation down to Tim Cook made my iPhone worse. It's like,
no.
oh really? Or Steve Jobs. He's behind this. Well, he had a whole team of people that were influential in designing and engineering.
Yeah.
Things. But people like to identify with the people instead.
Right. So we're wanting to build a demand and a supply tension throughout these methods because it can be the most powerful thing that you can do for your business. We've experienced that firsthand. And even, we've had 2 six-figure apparel businesses now. We still are learning. We still don't have everything perfect. We still make mistakes with it. We still are experimenting with posts and reaching out to different people and our offerings. But I'm always reminded of Abercrombie and Fitch. It was like a sinking ship. And even their CEO called people like fat and ugly.
Oh boy.
But then they got on TikTok and they literally turned the whole thing around.
Yes.
So
that's right.
if they can do it, I think you could do it too.
I mean, at the same time, when I think of like a 6-figure apparel company, it's a huge achievement to get up to that level. But at the same time, you start realizing how small you are and how much room you can grow. How much room you have to grow, I should say.
Yeah.
So here's a question. Do you think people can succeed in the next 5 years without having a presence on social media, whether that's a personal brand or their business?
I don't. Not in the apparel industry anyways. Even if you're doing like little pop-up shops or a farmer's market or whatever you're doing, you still should have a social media account. You should still be building a tribe of people who believe in what you believe and who want your products.
The way I think of it is you're going to have to sell something somehow. I just heard somebody today talking about, Microsoft, Apple, all these major luxury brands, they all have an army of salespeople going out into the world and trying to sell their products. If all of these major companies, luxury, all these things, have to do that, there's this dream that I think a lot of people have where they just assume that the ideal business for them is going to be one where people come to them.
Like
where
they open their shop.
Right, my shop is open for business and now people just through word of mouth or, I saw you on the street or whatever it is, they just are attracted to them and it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen and it doesn't grow that way. So you kind of have 2 opportunities. You can either go the route of becoming a cold calling advertisement lead funnel, a phone answering monster, or you can create a social media account and you can grow an audience of people who become engaged and they move their way through the circles of your Dunbar, what do they call it?
Yeah, Robert Dunbar.
Yeah. Or you can grow an audience of people online who slowly work their way to your inner circles using the Robert Dunbar effect.
And they want to be there. Like they almost feel like they led themselves there instead of they were forced to be there. And I think it makes them feel more genuinely attached instead of like they were sold to.
Well, I guess it works multiple ways. If you do it correctly and you're advertising and you're reaching out and you're calling people and you're getting leads, traditional marketing does work.
Yes.
But it's very easy to become the kind of person that pushes people away.
Where does that
a
lead
bit.
them to though? Traditional marketing.
Traditional marketing is going to lead them to your funnel, your conversions.
So let's say that leads them to their Shopify. So you find an ad, you're like, okay, I like this ad. It resonates with you in your niche. You go to their Shopify. Where's their social proof?
See, that's where you're going to have to develop. See, it always comes down to some form of connecting with customers.
Right.
Even if you have the perfect funnel, you're still going to have email marketing. You're going to have to reach out to them directly. So if it's not on a social media page that is benefiting from the still very inexpensive reach that you get organically, you put a social media post out there, if it gets any impressions for free, that's fantastic. And the more you get, the better it is, as opposed to
organic is
paid
always
traffic.
best.
Absolutely, yes.
It reminds me of the 7-Eleven theory or whatever it's called, where you have to have 7 hours of interaction with a brand or a person before you feel like you can buy from them and trust them. And then Google did the 11 points. So you visit their website or you move through 11 different aspects of that company or brand or person before you purchase. So you also have to think about how are they going to do that if you're not on social media. You're already slashing your chances of sales if you're not able to be there for that amount of time.
You do have to have a plan. So if you don't have a plan for how to go after the market and carve out a share, nothing's going to happen. And I think there's a lot of people who purchased equipment or started a business or they built something and they didn't have a plan. And instead they're sitting in this
I think that's a
limbo.
lot of people.
Yes, I've got a business, but I've got no sales. Why don't you have sales? Well, I can't seem to get people to buy my listing. Whatever it is, there's always something.
But
It's
even
because
think
they're
of
not
the
trying something.
aspects, though. Whenever you get equipment, there's such a learning curve to that equipment at first. You get overwhelmed. It's a new thing. You immediately have so much stuff on your plate, and then you have to go out and you have to be a business person, and you have to learn sales. How much room and time do you have to do
Well,
all
I remember
of
when I
that?
first was learning screen printing, it was overwhelming. You have to get your screens and you have to figure out what screen mesh size you
Yeah.
want, and then you got to code them and you got to line them up. There's all these technical aspects of getting your equipment up and running and learning the process. I think that's why print on demand is so attractive. If you can come up with a graphic and you can upload it, all of that other stuff works itself out.
You have one
and you pay a
side
little
of
margin.
the business. Yes.
And I think there's the opposite end of that is somebody who says, I want to own all of it. I want to get all the margin. And they buy themselves essentially a trade by getting this piece of equipment. Once you learn all that, you're like, okay, great. Let me turn the faucet on. And then you realize I have to have an entire plan to go
Ecosystem
out and
of
get
things.
people in here. Yeah.
There's a saying where you are essentially an Eiffel Tower, and people don't pay to go to the Eiffel Tower to go up and down it very often. They pay the most to be in the ecosystem of the Eiffel Tower. So the restaurants, the cafes, the shops, because they want to see it. They want to see it. They want to be a part of it. They want to feel like they visited. But that's the difference. You can't get your equipment and then not have a plan, because at the end of the day, you're going to get the best margins if you are doing it yourself. Print on demand doesn't do that for you. But you have to have the ecosystem set up, or else it's not going to flourish.
Yeah, if the Eiffel Tower was sitting in the middle of the desert in Spain, nobody's going to go see it. It's the entire ecosystem around it that drives that interest and awareness and traffic and all that,
I also think that that's how you become like the go-to brand in your niche. You become a specialist almost, because you're setting the stage around you with everything. So whenever we're talking about building all these platforms, you can even do like different posts within your niche, like we talked about, questions and answers on Facebook Lives, or you can have an Instagram channel, like a private channel that you're reaching out to all of your little tribe with. All of these things
Your little tribe.
Your little
I worked
tribe.
hard for that little tribe.
I know it's not easy, but all of these things compound. So whenever you're wanting to build your business and your brand, you almost have to think of it as an extension of you, and you have to become an expert, because if you're not an expert, who are you? People, how are they going to trust you? The Eiffel Tower is the Eiffel Tower for a reason. People know it. There's only one. People come from all over the world to see it, and that's why everything in that ecosystem does so well.
I mean, I feel like we're just barely touching the tip of the iceberg when it comes to just all the aspects that there are when it comes to building your brand and trying to get noticed online. Just dissecting all of these aspects of how to get your business to grow. I mean, because at the end of the day, that's it, right? I went into business because I want to be able to achieve whatever financial goal. And then as a result of achieving that goal, then kind of the world is your oyster. But if you can't even get off the ground, if you can't get that first sale, then what do you do? So it's like you take one step. You start somewhere, you take that first step, and then once you've done that, then you just keep moving forward, one step at a time, evaluating where you're at, pivoting, iterating. So we'll keep diving into these topics over the next couple of weeks. And if you have any questions, please leave them down in the comment section below. We'll see you next time.